kind of rare for it to snow in Bellingham. Usually we get a lot of snow up in the mountains, but down here near sea level, it doesn't really snow. But tonight's a snowy night in Bellingham, so I'm gonna tell you a story. I'll tell you a story about this photograph and the trip I went on to get it. It went nothing like I expected. The plan was to go to the Olympic Peninsula to photograph fall color. So 2 years before this, me and my wife had gone there and we backpacked in the Hoh rainforest and had an amazing experience, some really beautiful fall color, but we only had 3 days there and we only made it in about 5 miles. So the plan for this trip was to go back to the same spot, only this time go at least 15 or 20 miles in, get into that deep rainforest and just get the most amazing photographs we could. We left late on a Saturday night, took the ferry over, got there to a place where we could sleep in our camper that night. And then the next morning, we drove the rest of the way to the Hoh rainforest. We pulled into the Hoh rainforest parking lot, so excited to see this place again, and we looked around and all the leaves on all the trees were still green. So what do you do when there's no fall color on the Olympic Peninsula? You gotta go to the beach. We drove up to Mora, which is a place really near La Push. We camped there for the night. And then the next morning, we got our gear together, packed up our backpacks, and headed out to backpack along what's called the Shipwreck Coast. So the Shipwreck Coast starts on Rialto Beach. And Rialto Beach is a very pebbly beach. Hiked down the beach with our backpacks on, everything all set for a good day. We got across the beach to a place called Hole in the Wall, because there's a gorgeous, huge sandstone precipice that has the hole cut through it. In low tide, you can walk through the hole. High tide, you have to hike up over the head. But we were gonna camp on this side that night, and we're very excited to find this gorgeous campsite, so perfectly tucked back away from the beach and laid out right behind these beautiful trees. It was so perfect that there was even a sign there that said the luxury suite. The luxury suite is perfectly positioned back from the ocean where there's 2 huge dog-tooth sea stacks. So we're talking like, 80, 100-foot sea stacks that are shaped just like this, like perfect pyramids. Just when I started to take photographs, just as the day was really getting going, the clouds started doing some magical things, like things I've never seen clouds do before. And clouds are, I think, one of the most amazing aspects of nature. Like, you really see nature just being a total artist, painting the sky with clouds. But these clouds were like angelic, these little puffy clouds that had mist draping down from them. It was unreal and unlike anything I had ever seen. As the day went on and the evening started to come along, the sun was getting lower in the sky, starting to get more of the rich golden colors. The sky was still being incredible. So I walked through the hole in the wall at low tide, went around to the other side of that beach. I walked along this next beach, just checking it out, looking for neat photographs to take, and watching as the sun was getting lower. And I was just super excited to see this one cloud formation that looked like a comet. The sun looked like a comet coming down out of the sky with a rainbow around it. Just absolutely unbelievable, completely unreal. So coming back down that second stretch of the beach, back towards the hole in the wall, I took this lovely photograph that really took in the whole beach, the hole in the wall, the sky, just this perfect day. It was so wonderful. And I kept coming back down. I missed the opportunity to get back through the hole, had to climb up over the bluff. Kind of wasn't sad about that because the view from up there was incredible too. But then the sunset was coming, and it was gonna be one of the most amazing sunsets I've ever seen. The layering in the clouds was so complex. There were so many different shapes. There were so many different colors. And I had these dramatic dog-tooth sea stacks as the foreground. I was in photographer's heaven. The next day is when the real adventure began. We had less than 2 miles to travel that day, but it ended up being the slowest 2 miles of backpacking of my entire life. We had to get to our next campsite, which was at a place called the Chilean Memorial. Now the Chilean Memorial is called that because there is a boat from Chile that sank there, and there's a mass grave of about 20 sailors that went down there. And you know, some people say it's haunted. I didn't see anything, but it's a little creepy. What was really scary was that we had to cross 2 major headlands that could only be crossed at the low tide, and there was no overland passage for either of them. So we were on a tight schedule to get across these points, and we knew that, and we timed it, and we had prepared for that, but we were kind of thinking, oh yeah, you just got to get around this point and you're good. No. After you got around the point, there was actually 3/4 of a mile of rock that you had to cross, where there was a huge cliff on the side, and if you didn't get past that, when the tide came in, the waves were going to crash you into those rocks, and there was nowhere else to go. So we had to cross 3/4 of a mile of loose, slippery, exposed rock to get to the next little beach, and maybe 0.2 mile long beach to get to the next point. So we went around that point and then saw that there was another 1/2 mile of boulders and rocks that we had to get across before we got to the Chilean Memorial Beach. And I'm talking like huge boulders that you had to step from one to the other. So we were backpacking, right? So we had 40-pound backpacks on, plus my 10-pound camera bag, 7-pound tripod, and I'm stepping up from one boulder onto the next one, and then down from that one, down to the next one down, and then over to the next. It was intense, and the clock was ticking. We had only so much time before the tide came in. And there were so many times I wanted to stop to take a picture. But you can't. You cannot, or else you're not gonna make it. We did get to our campground in time, and when we got there, it was this just totally private cove, totally surrounded by wilderness, and we didn't know what the sunset was gonna be like. We were not disappointed. When we were waiting for the sun to go down, after we got our campsite up, we spotted a couple sea otters out playing way out in the surf. And they were diving down and getting their food, and they came up and they'd eat it on their little bellies. The sea otters are the cutest animals, I swear. It's so neat to get to see them in wild, in their natural habitat, and took that as a good sign. So sure enough, you know, we had our meal, and we got all prepped for the sunset, and oh my God, it was literally sublime. I call this photograph Sublime Olympic Beach Sunset because it was really one of the most amazing sunsets I'd seen in my whole life. The experience of being there was just exhilarating. It was this combination of perfect peace, absolute adventure, this full, widescreen experience of just nature's absolute majesty stretched out before us. Totally fascinating. As I ran up and down the beach, here, there, down in the surf, back up again, and as the sunset faded, I kept photographing it long past where most people would think the sunset is over, because I've learned that to get the different colors like blues and purples, you have to wait longer. So one of my favorite photographs from the whole trip was the last photograph of that night, where you still get a little bit of those warm tones, but then you also have all this cool blue and purple, and I'm doing a long exposure of about 2 seconds. So the surf comes in and then drains out, and with that long exposure, it ends up being like these beautiful brush strokes across the whole foreground of the image. Totally magical. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel to see more stories like this.